You often see her on CNN quite frequently, so she's going to be here. The Big Payback, Erica Alexander, is in town. She will be here. Keith Williams is with the Reparations Working Group in Detroit, Michigan. He'll be on our panel. Cheryl Davis, she is the Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission, all the way from San Francisco, California. Then right here from our great city of Evanston is Bobby Burns, the alderman who is also the chair of the Reparations Subcommittee. Justin Hansford is an attorney out of Washington, D.C. with the African American Redress Network, but he's also a part of the permanent UN Forum on People of African Descent, and they're on their way to Geneva, Switzerland as soon as they leave the conference. You probably know the sassy, irascible, brilliant Dr. Julianne Malvo is in town, the inaugural dean of the College of Ethnic Studies at Cal State, Los Angeles. Vanessa Hall Harper, council member from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Then, of course, many of you know Cam Howard. And finally, California already has a statewide California task force, and Dr. Cheryl Grills is going to be here to be on our panel to be a part of the conversation. So we have a great panel, and it's going to be moderated by Nkechi Taifa. If you remember her, she's energetic. She is so brilliant and so strong. She'll have you leaping up on the stage, ready to have this conversation. So to kick it off, however, I am honored to bring to the stage to bring the invocation. He has been a staunch member of the local reparations stakeholder authority, but he is also a pastor that has made his name by forging relationships with allies. And without strong allies and strong partners, we would not have the extraordinary reparations initiative we have here in Evanston. So would you please welcome for our invocation the Reverend Dr. Michael Neighbors. He is the senior pastor of Second Baptist Church and the president of the North Shore NAACP.
In the tradition of the African American religious experience, we understand the invocation to be a prayer inviting the presence of God into the surroundings. I prayed this prayer last night at our opening and got a relatively positive response. So for those of you who were there, you're going to hear a prayer from a Baptist preacher exactly in the same way that it was prayed last night. That's very unusual. I write my prayers. Let us bow. Loving and mercy-filled God, we come now in gratitude for the fulfillment of an ancient promise given to one of the prophets of old. In this season of Advent, we are reminded of the prophet Isaiah, whose voice rings out as a roar of thunder across the chasm of 2.5 millennia. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall you not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. On this evening, as we prepare for the town hall meeting, it is as much a celebration as it is a gathering of knowledge. We marvel at this new thing, a new thing unprecedented in the annals of the African diaspora, a new thing not done in any of the 50 states comprising our nation, a new thing where the ingenuity, brilliance, and collective spirit of Black people has developed a brand new paradigm. My God, we simply take a moment to thank you for lost bodies and bones of those who started the journey from the western shores of Africa into the western hemisphere of the world, who were lost to the waters of the Atlantic by the hatred and violence of inhumanity. We thank you for the ancestors whose hundreds of years of forced and free labor pouring forth from the blood, sweat, and tears, brutally treated, beaten, mocked, maimed, but never yielding. We thank you for those mothers and daughters, aunts and nieces who suffered so greatly as victims of greed and lust, whose womanhood was crushed, whose femininity was abused, whose regality and godliness was ridiculed. We say thank you. For the fathers and sons, uncles and nephews who were targeted with jealousy and the venom of envy, whose manhood was demeaned, whose personhood was attacked, whose royal godliness was mocked, we say thank you. In gathering this evening, we pray for the spirit of the ancestors from Gorée Island to Ghana, from slave ships long destroyed, from auction blocks built from Richmond to New Orleans. We pray for the spirit of ancestors who struggled for over 250 years under the vicious institution of sinful slavery. We pray for the spirit of the ancestors who faced every setback, every roadblock, every ill wind through the rise of racism. May we see their spirits dancing among us in Evanston, Illinois. May we feel the might of their spirit as they see part of their highest hopes and deepest dreams coming to fruition. Bless, anoint, touch, breathe into every speaker tonight, and may the collective and unabashed resilience of supreme Black excellence bathe the streets of our city with streams of promise flowing to every other city in our nation. Yes, Lord. Amen and Ashe.
Thank you, sir. Very appropriate. Very appropriate that we would begin with such a prayer. Remembering our ancestors. I know that many of you have stories in all of us have stories of the struggles of our ancestors. Some in the Deep South, but many up South, right here in liberal bastions like Evanston, Illinois, where our people were stripped of rights, were discriminated against and removed from neighborhoods and blocked from moving into neighborhoods only on the basis of the color of our skin, which is really one of the basis for the Evanston Reparations initiatives, which is dealing with that by providing housing vouchers and other forms of restitution in order to contribute to rebuilding wealth. It may be modest, but nonetheless, it is a beginning. And so it is good to honor our ancestors. It is also good in the African tradition, the Black tradition, that we are a people who are a righteous people. And that righteousness means that we always remember not only ourselves. I think there's something that says somewhere, love thy neighbor as thyself, but love thy neighbor. And so we are aware that this land is a land which also has an original sin. And that original sin was the brutal, vicious, treacherous dispossession of Native people. And I use my words advisedly because the Native people welcomed those who came as friends, as people to be helped, even though they saw that they looked different and they were obviously not of the same pigmentation. It did not matter. They welcomed them and wanted to help them. But that was not the intention, curiously, of those who were fleeing religious persecution. They ended up persecuting the indigenous people, and eventually, through metaphorically a trail of tears and broken treaties, stole and dispossessed this land. So we want to honor them. We want to remember them. And so to have an ancestral acknowledgement, we welcome to the stage Attorney Clara McFarland, who is a part of the the Reparations Committee here in Evanston. Would you please come to the stage and do this important acknowledgement? Do you know? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing. You want to use this as letter, or do you want to hold? Which one?
This one more reliable? Okay, thank you. Good evening. You know, as we've been together today, I want to mention that the practice of starting with an ancestral acknowledgement is something that we discussed as a committee with looking at what some of the other cities and what some of the other local entities were doing. So it's sharing and coming together, sharing ideas. And so I hope that you'll hear some of the words from your community. Some of these will touch you as well. With great humility and deep gratitude, we honor the strength, endurance, and sacrifice of our Black ancestors. We honor those enslaved African people whose forced labor was exploited for generations to help establish the economy of our region and the United States. We honor those Black ancestors who persevered despite discriminatory laws and practices that created a racial caste system, legitimized anti-Black racism, and continue to plague our community today. It is only by recognition and understanding of these errors begun during our nation's origins and continuing today that we can hope to correct our path. We acknowledge this exploitation not only of minds and labor, but of our humanity. We grieve for those Black ancestors who, despite their contributions to this city's wealth and freedom, were never recognized, nor fairly compensated, nor allowed to fully realize their own sovereignty. Because of their work, we are here and will invest in the descendants of that legacy. And through this process, we work to repair some of the harms caused by the city of Evanston. We also hope our focused attempts at reparation will serve as an example to the United States government and prompt other institutional accomplices to begin the process of repair. Thank you.
Let's say ashe, ashe, ashe. Right. Okay, now we have some of the most magnificent voices in the world. In Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles of the Black value system, which are the foundation for Kwanzaa, there are 7 principles, as you well know, and one of them is kuumba, creativity. And it is quite powerful to know that despite the anguish and the trauma, that we as a people were able to always find ways to communicate, to embrace each other, and to find ways to create music. And by the way, in creating that music, very often our ingenuity was such that we could be right in the master's space and sing songs of rebellion without the master even knowing. The Negro spirituals were such. And so we bring to the stage now a hymn which has become the Black national anthem, which epitomizes the legacy of struggle of our people. And so we are honored to present the Black national anthem. If you would please rise, Ms. Tina Pinnock and her assistant, Justin. Would you please rise for the Negro hymn, as was called by James Weldon Johnson, that has become the Black national anthem.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat, had not a weary feet come to a place for which our Father sighed. We have come over away with the tears that been watered. We have come treading the path through the blood and the slaughter. Our friend the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where a white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, thou who hast made us thus far on the light, where with the sun light, let us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the place where our God had we met thee, lest our hearts drunk from the wine with the world we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, well to our God, true to our native land.
Okay. I see that some of our panelists have arrived. We want our guests to be seated in the first two rows here, but our panelists, we want to make their way to the stage. So I'm going to be calling you as I see. I think I see Miss Reba Martin. You heard me mention her name. Would you please come to the stage? Dr. Julianne Malvo, Dr. Cheryl Grills, the dynamic Sister Nkechi Taifa. Who else? I'm trying to look to see who else is out there. Just come on this side. We'll fill up this side first, and we'll figure it out later. But we don't let you know y'all is up in here. I told them y'all was coming. I told them y'all was here. And we'll greet more as they come. Actually, leave this seat open for me, Ariba. Why don't you move one more over? Leave this seat open for me. You can come here, Sister Nkechi. Sister Cheryl Davis, and you sit here, sit there, you can sit there, that's good, all right. Others will be coming. Okay, well, we want to now have our brother who has been inspiring us with his music while we're waiting for the rest to come, and I'm sure they'll be shortly. A drum salute, a drum rendition from our brother. Would you please take it away one more time? Now that our audience has grown and our panelists are arriving, we are delighted to hear from you, after which we'll move forward with the program. So let's give our brother another big round of applause for having stayed the course with us. All right, thank you so much. Let's give him a big round of applause. He's been holding down the fort. He's been holding down the fort for us. Another big round of applause, brother. We appreciate you so much. Okay, let's have our brother Bobby Burns. Would you please come to the stage too, please? And I understand that the big payback has arrived. Erica Alexander, would you come up on the stage, please? People have been waiting for you. They're waiting for the big payback up in here. Cam Howard is here. And of course, we have Robin Rue Simmons is in the house, accompanied by Congresswoman, oops, they're telling me to wait a minute. They're telling me to wait a minute, so I'm going to wait a minute. Let me see who else we have. Now, Keith Williams is supposed to be on the stage as well. Is Keith here? Okay, Keith is supposed to be on the stage as well. Reba, Cheryl, Keith, Bobby Burns, Justin Hansford. Where's Justin? Is Justin here? Justin's on his way. Justin's on his way. Mayor Bisk is on his way. Robin is here, right? Okay. All right. Well, we have something special, by the way. I know. We have something very, very special. We have something very special. So we're going to ask Mayor Biss if you would kindly come and bring greetings. Let's give it up for the mayor. Give it up for the mayor.
Well, good evening. What a pleasure to welcome this extraordinarily distinguished panel here to Evanston Township High School. I'm so looking forward to the discussion. It's an honor for us to welcome Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee to our community, this extraordinary national leader pushing this boulder up this hill on such a critical issue. Thank you, Congresswoman, for all the work you do. And I want to say a special thank you to Robin Rue Simmons as well. You can clap if you want, but I'm going to say a little bit, and then I hope you'll clap again after that too. Let's see how that goes. We have been so inspired by Robin's leadership here in Evanston. I think sometimes we forget about the core insight that she had. The insight that I think really brought this group of people together on this remarkable 3-day symposium. And that insight was that this is an issue that we could debate about forever if our goal was to form a debating society. And I used to be a professor, and now I'm a politician, so I can do that. But the moral urgency of the issue does not allow us to just keep on talking. At some point, it is time, in fact, long past time to act. And it can be scary to go first. It can feel risky to go first. It can be controversial to go first. But someone's got to go first, and it was time to act. And because of Robin and that city council, we have taken this historic step in the city of Evanston. And the beautiful thing is we are joined by communities across the country, represented by folks in this room tonight, who are also acting, who are figuring out their own ways to take action, knowing that the moral demands of this issue not only require action today, but require action decades ago. And waiting one additional day beyond this is simply not acceptable. And so I want to close by saying that it is not enough for municipalities alone to act. It is as important as it is for municipal governments and other local institutions to take stock of the harm that we have done and begin our walk down the path to repair of that harm. We don't have the capacity, we don't frankly have the budget to repair the magnitude of harm that was done by the foundational crime of slavery in this country. And so we need the federal government to join us in acting. And the federal government is closer today to acting than it has ever been. It's not there yet, but it is closer than it has ever been. And we are so fortunate to have Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee with us tonight, guiding us as we figure out what final steps are going to be necessary to achieve the true reparations that are just morally demanded not only by the history of this country, but by the present. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Thank you for being a part of this evening. And as we come out of this inspiring symposium, I know we will all be that much strengthened in our commitment to fight for what must be done in this country. Thank you very much.
Mayor, would you be kind enough to remain on the stage, sir? And now we'd like to please have Robin Rue Simmons and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee come to the stage, please. Please, would you please come? For a special presentation, and we need both of you for a special presentation. And we can't do the special presentation without the lead sponsor for H.R. 40, who inherited the torch from the Honorable John Conyers and has carried it magnificently, and we can attest to that. She's courageous, she's visionary. You see her everywhere. She is the Energizer Bunny of the Congressional Black Caucus. She's a bad sister from Houston, Texas, the Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee. Come on, I need you up here. All right, Robin, come around here, Robin, come around here. We got something special for you, Robin. And we got to have, and you and the Congresswoman all coordinated too. Y'all had a fashion statement together. All right. All right. Okay, so now, with our special guests from out of town, would y'all remain standing so y'all can see that these are the folks, y'all just stay, these are your friends, these from all over the country. Stand up from all across the country, our leaders were here. Most of them are over there. Right. So now, Mr. Reba Martin, would you approach the stage, please? I understand you have a special something to present, Ms. Robin Rue Simmons?
Yes.
Okay, well, let me just get out of the way and give you the microphone.
Okay.
And ask the mayor to slide over here. The host.
Okay, can we have the mayor come over for this? And Robin, can you come here, please? Robin Rue Simmons is the recipient of the prestigious 2022 American Association for Access, Equity, and Diversity Rosa Parks Award. This award is presented to an individual who has served as a role model and leader to others through personal achievements, excellence in a chosen field, commitment to human rights, civil rights, and social issues, and made a significant contribution to the betterment of her city, to her nation, and to the world. Congratulations, Robin Rue Simmons.
That is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is an honor to do this work. I am blessed to be able to do this work with so many. So on behalf of everybody here that's fighting for reparations, whether you're a stakeholder, an ally, a leader, a legislator, this is for us. The work continues onward.
Okay, we're about to get started here. I want to make sure the Congresswoman has her seat here. And, okay, make sure I didn't forget anything. Let me go over my notes here because I don't want to get fired. Well, again, it is such an honor to be here in Evanston on this occasion because you mean so much. You've done so much. You've made history and you continue to make history. And in your honor, and because of what you have done, the word has spread all over the world. I've just returned from Bogota, Colombia for an important reparations summit. It was discussed there. Evanston was on the map. Many of us went to Accra, Ghana this summer for 100 or so reparations leaders gathered. Evanston was on the map. But HR 40 was also on the map. The world is looking to Black people, Africans in America, people of African descent. They are looking at us and our allies to lead the way to cleanse this nation of its original sins, and indeed across the world, colonialism, imperialism, anti-Black racism. We are the ones who were enslaved, and yet the rejected stones are becoming the cornerstones of a new, just world order. That's who we are. And so to celebrate, to have a conversation about that, we now want to, again, just quickly introduce our panel. And Nkechi Taifa will be moderating. Let me just, you can wave your hands. You've just already met the dynamic Areva Martin. She can raise her hand, right? Erica Alexander is in the house. Brother Keith Williams, who's with the Reparations Working Group from Detroit, the Motor Cities, in the house. Cheryl Davis, the dynamic executive director of the Human Rights Commission in San Francisco, California. Right here in the city, walking in the footsteps, and we talked to him. He said, I'm doing the best I can to keep up with Robin Ruth Simmons. She's helping me, she's meant, but Lord have mercy, she works so hard. He said, but I'm trying to do my best. And that's Bobby Burns, alderman from Evanston, here. Justin Hansford is in the house somewhere. If not, he'll be here shortly. And I already introduced him. He is with the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, and all the way from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Councilwoman Vanessa Hall Harper. California Task Force member leading the public engagement sector, Dr. Cheryl Grills. And of course, Cam Howard, the director of Reparations United. I'm scared, I don't know what to do with it, because if I say the wrong thing, she just might fire me forever. But the irascible, brilliant, capable, able, y'all know her. It's Dr. Julianne Malvo in the house. And she is the dean of the College of Ethnic Studies, the College of Ethnic Studies, not a department, the whole college. She's the initial inaugural dean, Cal State, Los Angeles. I hope I have not forgotten anybody. I now want to introduce our moderator, Sister Nkechi Taifa. She's a veteran struggler. She's been out here. Well, she helped raise me, for one thing. I mean, I would not be what I am today except for her mentoring and her teaching. She's a founding member of NCOBRA, the National Coalition for Reparations for Blacks in America, that carried the torch for decades. A founding member, and we're so proud of the inaugural member of the National African American Reparations Commission, and has founded her own organization, Reparations Education Project. And she got a couple of books out there too, and got a whole new book coming out too. I'm sure she's going to tell us about it. Would you please give a thunderous ovation for our moderator for this evening, Sister Nkechi Taifa.
So greetings and salutations, everyone. Oh, I feel good. Do you feel good? Yeah. Because it's reparations time. You know what I'm talking about? And I think it was just so very fitting that The award, the Rosa Parks Award, was given today to our own very alderman, former alderman and director of FirstRepair, Robin Ruth Simmons, because just yesterday, December 1st, the beginning of this auspicious, awesome convening of state and local reparations people from across the country, just yesterday, in the year 1955, was the day in which Rosa Parks sat down on that bus and brought about a movement, a civil rights movement, which has changed the history of this country. And what we are on the steps of right now is another movement, none other than the Reparations movement, of which you all right here, right now, today, in Evanston, Illinois, are at the precipice of. So again, congratulations, Robin Ruth Simmons, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Wow. I mean, what can we say? Someone who has just carried the torch, picked up that torch from the Honorable John Conyers, and guess what? It's just about brought it across the finish line. Know what I'm talking about? So at this time, I would like to call the Congresswoman up again to make some remarks, some framing remarks for us as we are about to embark on this conversation, even though can we say conversation reparation, shall we say, this evening. So let's give it up again for our Congressman, our great leader, Congresswoman, the Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee.
You are.
What an honor to be here this evening and to come to Evanston, Illinois, the epicenter of reality and success in the comprehension that we too are America. Some words that I just said some few moments ago. I got years on my mind. Let me, you know I have to be humbled by the presence of such iconic persons, so let me acknowledge all of the panelists who are giants themselves and make sure that you acknowledge them as well. But as I do that, who can walk past Nkechi? Who can ignore the enthusiasm, the absolute affirmation of life and humanity? Would you give her a very big hand? She talks about me. I'm inspired by her. Delighted to have Erica Alexander, African-American woman, director, actress, social justice activist, fighter on the battlefield. Keith Williams, Reparations on his mind. Shirley Davis, working from California, Executive Director, Human Rights Commission. Bobby Burns, Alderman, Evanston, Illinois. Justin Hansford, Dr. Julianne Malvo, all of them implanted, working for what is right and what is real. Vanessa Hall Harper, Councilmember Tulsa, Wall Street Massacre. Cam Howard, did I leave anyone out that's on the stage and will be presenting? Did I not do my esteemed attorney, Mr. Martin? Might I say to you, it is always a pleasure to see you on the big screen, giving us the most eloquent legal analysis, and I'm comforted by your presence on this stage. Would you give all of them a very big hand, please? I hope I said the council member's name. If not, my sister, my alderman, we have gone from one part of the nation to the next, and I've been delighted to host her in Washington and also have her in the most powerful committee in the Congress, I might say. I don't know what anyone else says. Judiciary Committee, to be one of our most potent and powerful witnesses. Give her a very big hand as well. He is a young man, and he ages backwards. I'm so glad that he continues to remind us of our dear beloved friend, John Conyers, who had the courage in 1989. This is 3 decades plus. Dr. Ron Daniels, a presidential candidate, an ongoing, unceasing internationalist He finds reparations where others cannot even speak the word. Give Dr. Ron Daniels, who has been a focused fighter for reparations for decades, never ceasing. And of course, Cam, I want to thank you so very much. When we are off course, Cam Howard finds a way from Detroit, I guess it's in the DNA, finds a way to get us on track. Let me do this because the panelists are going to be enormous contributors to where we're going. I'm going to, I don't like holding, looks like this one, is it on or off or? Okay. I'm going to see if you can hear me. I know. Hello? You can hear it? Let me also take a moment.
That one was working.
Was? Testing. All right. 410. When we begin to talk about the Constitution, I promise you I will not go beyond the moments that these fine panelists need to give their presentation. But I've really gone all over the country dealing with reparations. Harvard is dealing with it. There's 2 professors there that are entrenched in coming out with something very soon. I don't think there are articles coming out that traces the historical record of reparations being given all over the United States. One might even characterize the GI fundings, reparations, repairing the damage or repairing the soldiers came home starting in World War II. But before I do that, let me acknowledge Mayor Bliss, because they're elected officials and they're elected officials. And as he was so humble to say, Alderman Simmons, I think this started before his tenure, but he has now taken the torch. There's something about taking the torch, because you can start something and another mayor comes in, because there is something about being the mayor. And he can indicate, this is not his thing. Would you give Mayor Bliss, the mayor of Evanston, for taking the torch and not giving up but moving it on? You can do better than that. Mayor Bliss, the mayor of Evanston, Illinois. Give him a very big hand. He has an historic history that I know that he has shared with his grandparents in Auschwitz that cannot be denied. So let me just do this for a moment. How am I going to frame this? I'm going to frame this California, Evanston, New York, whoever's in the room, Mississippi, with the simple question: we too are the simple proponent. We too are America. And for too long, under the slavery umbrage, we've had to make excuses as African Americans whenever there was a question, whether it was civil rights or otherwise. I may have an opportunity to document this, but I'm just going to do a roll call and just have us in 2022. And I think you can find any sociologist, psychologist, criminologist, etc., economists, that will in 2022 document by race the disparities among African Americans. Now let me say to America, I do not walk down streets and find a load of African Americans staying on the corner saying, woe is me, I've got disparities. Yes, we are faced with the economic disparities that you will find in walking through our neighborhoods and recognizing that conditions are not the best, that people are living in housing that is not the best, and you will go to any of our cities. And all the hopes and dreams of Dr. Martin Luther King, and when we rush to name our streets after him, and you can go to that street, Cam Howard, and you can see that it is not Dr. King's dream. And one would wonder why that is the case. All of those who came into the 20th century civil war or civil rights came with the hopes and dreams of freedom again. As the slaves did when the first proclamation, the Emancipation, 1863, Those of us in Texas had to wait until 1865. We were starry-eyed and we were waiting, and General Sherman, with the order, indicated that he wanted to give 40 acres and a mule. Some have characterized that with humor. We've got one of our good friends whose wonderful production company has that name, and I want to dispel you of any myth to have a look of laughter on your face. General Sherman did say that we should have received from southeastern United States 40 acres and a mule that equal to, at least minimally, some form of reparations or repair. The obliteration of Reconstruction that lasted barely 12 years, 1887, they decided, you know what, the South is far more important than the descendants of enslaved Africans or those who had barely become free. And so the framing is that we barely tasted freedom, did some miraculous things. We opened a lot of historically black colleges. We rushed to be educated. We became governors and senators and representatives. We ran into the 20th century, but, well, what did we find? Birth of a nation. Auntie or grandma who was feisty would roll down that country road going to the grocery store, and we never saw them again because they had been too feisty the day before. You talk to black folk historically, and you will find a lot of folk went missing in the early 1900s. I'm framing it to say there is no excuse behavior. There is no woe is me. It is about the reality of where we are. It is not accusatory. It is not asking my neighbors who don't look like me. It is saying to my neighbors, as John Conyers did, as he stood along with the other civil rights organization in absolute unwavering support for the Japanese Americans in 1988 when Ronald Reagan, a Republican, signed an American Civil Liberties Act, which was reparations for the internment of our Japanese brothers and sisters. We rejoiced for the fairness of it, for the concept of international law. We came forward, we introduced that bill. John Conyers from Detroit, a brave and out-of-the-box thinker way back in the United States Congress, coming in around 1965 or thereafter as a member. And we just fought this forever and ever and ever. I don't want to go to the historical record of, I did that earlier today, but I'll just quickly say we fought in every Revolutionary War. Again, we do not say woe is me. Oh yes, we've been in the Black Power movement, we've been Black Panthers, Civil Rights movement, student movement. We have been fighting. But the way we've been doing it is not woe is me. We've been justifying, we've been educating, we've been having free breakfasts initiated, that's the early Head Start, Huey Newton and others. Fred Hampton wanted civic participation, justice. We've been on the forefront. And let me be very clear, every time we fought for justice, somebody's boat got risen. Most people will tell you, the student movement, all of the issues dealing with wars, we were the foundation of organizing that we stood on. So very quickly, let me say, if I take a roll call of health care, over 20% of African Americans don't have health insurance. Just trying to do this very quickly. Education. Let me just say 57% of black students have access to full math, and 71% of white students. During the pandemic, everybody woke up and said, oh my gosh, inner city schools or rural schools are predominantly African Americans, don't have any access to the internet. We were telling them that they could be at home studying and they had no access. Disparities. Criminal justice, I need not say anything. This number I'm trying to get right. Oh, here it is. South Africa under apartheid, 1993, African males, 851 per 100,000. Under apartheid, incarcerated. United States, 2006, African American males, 4,789 per 100,000. Criminal justice system. I'm gonna let you go in a minute. Black children die from firearm homicides at a rate 10 times higher than white children. I'm gonna let you go. Let you go. Sorry, I got these papers. COVID, I said, go to Harvard University Medical School said if we had had reparations before COVID, we would not have had the high numbers of death in the African American community. Documented. I'm trying to get you to understand that when you hear these panelists, let's not bow our heads. Obviously those in this room are not, but you're not educating others because they are. You're not educating people who don't look like us because they are suggesting that we're with our hand out, and that is not our desire. H.R. 40 is a very concise and brilliantly written legislation with over 217 co-sponsors and 14 pages, and we articulate what the legislation will do. We do not tell you what to do. We do not tell you what the proposals will be. We only tell you that we will have the most effective commission executive order that we demand, politely, but again, I'm saying that because I know we got a lot of recordings going on. I want to make sure I get it. I don't want to make sure I undermine it. Anyhow, H.R. 40, precisely a commission, funded, staff, going out to hear what you have to say, and developing the reparations proposals. Could be many, many things. Why do HBCUs, do I must say, we have gotten the most money in the last 2 years. Thank you, President Biden and the Congressional Black Caucus on HBCUs. But I will say to you, somebody can clap, because we really have put $1 billion in there. And by the way, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, you had the American Rescue Act. Anybody got the child tax credit? The families that are in this room, a lot of money were put into people's pockets. Nobody called that reparation, but what we were doing is we were repairing the damage of COVID-19. Nobody called that reparations. Nobody. Nobody called rushing to get dollars that we didn't do enough of from Katrina or Ion or Ike or Harvey. It wasn't reparation, we were repairing. There are people still trying to be repaired. So I hope I can find my page because I'm coming to an end. I really am. But I do have to do this because as a lawyer, this is the book that I stay in as a member of the Judicial Committee. Let me just say this. Because of Dr. Daines and others, we had the most successful hearing. We had never had this kind of hearing in the United States Congress. People were singing, they were dancing, they were out in the hallway. We had to have a spillover. It was an amazing hearing. Again, in the most powerful committee. Standing room only. And those who wanted to be negative cam, they couldn't get a word in edgewise. They could not. If you've seen congressional hearings, you know there's another side that's going to try to ask you a question, and there was an answer for every one of them. And it was not in anger, it was facts. So this is a quick ending of what I want to say. This book is the Constitution. I live in it because I am the mentee to Barbara Jordan. She had the office before me, and Mickey Leland. She told me to always carry a Constitution in my purse. It's a book that was attempted to be shredded on January 6, 2021, when I was flat on my belly in the United States chambers. As the mob came, as the gunshots rang, we wondered what was going to happen. This book, To Create a More Perfect Union. But if you want to talk about reparations, the question is whether people in communities that are descendants of enslaved Africans, this does not deny that it has not existed in certain instances with others. But there's certain aspects of the Bill of Rights at each level, we can find a disparity in terms of African Americans. First Amendment, in many of our early efforts at protests and civil rights, marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the condemnation of government was so severe. That was our First Amendment, right to access, right to movement. Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure. I need not cite to you incidences dealing with folk coming into your homes in high numbers. The documentation is stark. The Fifth Amendment due process, the taking of land. Ask the country folk how their land continues to be taken. Unequal treatment under the Constitution, even in spite of the Fifth Amendment. Sixth Amendment, right to trial by jury. 3 of your peers. Ask defense lawyers. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and even today, the struggle. Reparations deals with restoring the wrong. Sixth Amendment, Seventh Amendment, unreasonable, cruel and unusual punishment on the Eighth Amendment. Look at the statistics of those receiving the death penalty. And then, of course, we go to the famous 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment. Today, we still fight for the right to vote, 15th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, we still fight for equal protection in the law. The Supreme Court is going to be hearing whether or not affirmative action should be considered. And I've always said, proudly so, got into the university that I went in. We were in an era when we were being pushed to go to universities alongside of our sister HBCUs. We were being pushed to go and integrate those other universities. And yes, I got into Yale on affirmative action, both as a woman and as an African American. I have no shame in that. They had to go out and look for us. But I'll find anybody to say I did not graduate on affirmative action. And so, we're in an era that confronts us with the reality of what is right and real. I'm very grateful to those of you in this room that are widely diverse from me, because it'll only be Americans taking this little book seriously to drive forward all kinds of repair. Repair is vast. And needless to say, there are black creeds, do I have it right, creeks? Make sure since I spoke about it the other day. Native Americans, there are people that are indigenous, there is the Latino community. In all aspects, there's something that needs to be repaired. So I'm not going to be selfish, but I am going to be pointed and focused on this one charge that must go now. And we will be the boat that lifts all boats. And so if I frame this argument or discussion tonight, it is, again, as I started, we too are Americans. When the Founding Fathers came, imperfect as they were, they came to create a more perfect union. That journey has not been completed. And so to begin its completion, are we to wait for 2050? Are we to wait to the 22nd century? Are we to fix it now? And so that is what we're doing in asking our president, that represents all of America, to bring us together by granting the executive order. Oh yes, we could vote on the floor and go to the Senate, but I'm not ashamed to say there are many bills that can't get 60 votes in the Senate. So I should not be hesitant. This legislation is right. Use the powers of the executive branch and do an executive order as written by the first branch, the United States Congress. To create a more perfect union, let us restore and repair our constitutional rights of the descendants of enslaved Africans. No shame, but only standing and working to give dignity to all of those who never came with a woe and never came with their hand out and went to every war, died on behalf of this nation. I have no shame. It is time now for H.R. 40, the Commission to Study Slavery and Develop Reparation proposal. It is time.
It is time. Woo! It is time. Let's give it up again for Congresswoman Sheila we did this. I'm just.
We just love you.
Hey, it's all good. Okay. I'm gonna do it right now.
You want 30 minutes.
All right now. Okay, so what we're gonna do now, Congresswoman, thank you so much. I just gotta say it again. Thank you so much for being who you are. Well, so what we're gonna do, because are we gonna be able to have time for Q&A after Dr. Daniels? We're gonna do one round. Okay, but in this one round, I want you to really be able to have the opportunity to not only give us a fuller view of just who you are, but specifically of the work you do. And I'm just going to start with one person first, and then I'm going to go in the order in which it is on the program. But I also want to recognize Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, who's down there, who is from the church in the only surviving edifice, I think, in Tulsa. Am I correct at that time? I know you're not there now, but yeah, and now you're the pastor of a church in Baltimore. But I just want to acknowledge you there in the audience, Reverend Robert Turner. Also a commissioner of NARC, National African American Reparations Commission. But we have another commissioner here, and the reason I want to call her up first is because we're here on the local level right now, Evanston being the first municipality, okay, to use this creative funding mechanism to fund reparatory justice projects here in this city. But on the state level, there is a historic first state that is right now in the process of holding hearings. And Dr. Cheryl Grills, who's also a NARC commissioner, National African American Reparations Commission, is a commissioner on that task force, the California Reparations Task Force. So I want you to just go in and start off. I think we have about 3 to 5 minutes per person. Tell us a little bit more about yourself very briefly, but more importantly, the work that you're doing as part of the California Reparations Task Force.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay. Thank you. I'm not going to waste time talking about me. I want to get straight to the issues, which is the work of the California Reparations Task Force. We are in the final 7 months of a 2-year term, and at this point, we have in our first year commissioned and released an interim report that lays out the harms, the multitude of harms done against Black people and people of African ancestry and direct descendants in California and across the nation. And the thing that's important about this interim report is that it draws a through line from enslavement to the present, showing that we have been dealing with unmitigated racial trauma and harm. There has been no moment of relief from this. It has been ongoing. All it has done is mutated across time. And so in that regard, I implore you, please read that interim report. It's not a short read, but it's an important read, and it's the least that we can do to honor and respect the anguish and the prolonged suffering of Black people in this country, and to have the understanding of what actually happened in order to accurately come up with forms of repair. Now, that's the other thing that we are now working on. In our final 7 months, we are going to be laying out different forms of reparation and calculating the costs associated with those things. If you happen to have ideas about forms of reparation that you would like for us to know, please, you can go to the website of the Department of Justice in California and submit your ideas there. They will get to all of us, or you can simply send them directly to cheryl.grills@lmu.edu, and that's Cheryl with a C. The other thing that we are trying to do is to humanize this need for reparations. And so in that regard, we are going to be including a lot of personal testimony, not public comment, not advocating for a position, but getting the stories of harm that are still in the minds, the hearts, the DNA, the genetics of Black people in this country.
And by telling their stories, hopefully we will reach more than just the minds of America, the minds of citizens of California, but we will actually touch their conscience and their heart. And if we can't touch the heart and conscience of people about what has been done to us, then the travesty of enslavement and the oppression of Black people, in terms of the damage that it has done to all of America, will be revealed. You see, because at some point your own humanity gets compromised when in the midst of harm being done to those around you, you look the other way. You come up with rationalizations. You support the oppression. So this is, I believe California is in a position to really make a difference for HR 40 and for the local efforts. And the last thing that I'll say about California is that some people have argued that, this needs to be a national or federal effort only. I say it needs to be both local and national. When you look at the local level and you begin to see the exact nature of the harms, then you have a better understanding about what the redress needs to look like. You have a better accounting at the federal level for the scale and scope of interventions that need to be done to have guarantees of non-repetition. Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much, Dr. Grills. So I want to turn now to our illustrious, esteemed civil rights attorney, talk show host, CNN expert specialist. We're talking about none other than Sister Areva Martin. And you have been representing hundreds of families in Palm Springs, California. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, and tell us just about the work, the very critical work that you're doing to bring justice to these families.
Thank you so much. And I just want to follow up with what Cheryl said about the importance of there being both national efforts as well as local efforts. And it's only fitting that I follow Cheryl because Cheryl's on the Reparations Task Force for California, and I am a civil rights attorney representing hundreds of families in Palm Springs, California. And many of you may know Palm Springs because Palm Springs is known as this exotic vacation spot in the desert. And unfortunately, while Palm Springs was promoting its image of Hollywood luxury in the 1950s and 60s and marketing itself as the playground for the rich and famous, it was forcibly expelling Black and Mexican Americans from their homes in a section of town called Section 14. And to gain use of this prime downtown real estate occupied by Section 14 residents, the city hired contractors to bulldoze the houses, oftentimes with the personal belongings of these families inside. And then it sent the Palm Springs Fire Department to burn the homes of these families. And I'm just going to say that again because the fire department is who you call when someone else has set your house on fire. It is not the entity that you would expect to be setting the fire of your homes. But that's what happened in Palm Springs during this time period. And then after driving these families out, the city didn't offer them any restitution, any relocation assistance, or any help at all. It was fear, it was intimidation, and fire. I've been working with Dr. Malvo to do a preliminary harm assessment because one has not been done of what happened to these families. And just an economic preliminary harm assessment estimates that the harm to these families ranges between $400 million and $2 billion. Now, the facts of what happened in Palm Springs is really not in dispute. The California Attorney General sent investigators to Palm Springs and issued a lengthy report where it admonishes the city for these racially targeted attacks. It says that about 1,000 families were driven out in what the Attorney General calls a city-engineered Holocaust. Those are the words from the California Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General corroborates the lived experiences of these families, the dispossession that happened with respect to these families, and how the city pushed families basically into poverty at a time when it was marketing itself, as I said earlier, as this glitzy, exotic location. Now, until now, very recently, this man-made catastrophe, this atrocity, has largely been a shameful secret confined to the city limits of Palm Springs. But I believe that Section 14 should be mentioned alongside Tulsa, alongside Rosewood, and alongside Bruce's Beach, for those of you that are familiar with what happened in Manhattan Beach, California. I've had the honor and the privilege of listening to the stories of hundreds of Section 14 families, and I have to tell you, these stories are harrowing. They're heartbreaking to hear survivors, some as old as 94 years old, talk about coming home from school and seeing their homes on fire, seeing their neighbors' homes on fire. One of the survivors talking about moving 5-6 times because they were trying to escape the fires. They'd set a fire on one block, her family would have to move to the next block. So they were constantly running, trying to evade the bulldozing and burning down of their homes. And what we know is that in doing this, Palm Springs was teaching little black and brown children that their parents were helpless. It taught them that they were worthless. It taught them that working hard, because these were hard-working families who were building Palm Springs. They were building the country clubs, the tennis clubs, the hospitals. These were chefs and maids and cooks and nannies who were supporting the lifestyle of these rich Hollywood stars who were vacationing in this town. But they were teaching these little kids that their families had no worth, that they had no value, and that white people could still take away everything you had worked hard to accomplish and to build, that your parents had no recourse. We recently filed an amended government claim form outlining what we believe to be the legal basis for why Palm Springs should address the harms that were done to these families. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee talked about the Constitution, and of course there are a myriad of constitutional violations that happen with respect to the actions of Palm Springs. Our goal is to work with the city to address the harms that were done, but it's so important that the city understands the urgency of what has happened. This happened over 60 years ago, and to heal these wounds, we believe that these families, these survivors, hundreds of them, possibly even thousands, they shouldn't have to wait another decade, wait another year, wait another month, wait another day. The families are at the table, and we're calling on Palm Springs to pull up, to pull up and to right the wrongs that were perpetrated on these families.
To pull up and to right the wrongs. Thank you very much, my sister. A city-engineered Holocaust. Oh, yes, Palm Springs needs to be part of the litany of horrors that we talk about when we deal with Tulsa and Elaine, Arkansas, and all of the other atrocities that are out there. Wow, y'all, we got some celebrity up in here. I mean, you've heard from some of them already. But another one that I'm going to call on now, we're talking about, I remember back in the day. Yes, I remember back in the day. Max, yeah, living single. It is critical that we unify arts and culture with policy and politics, because that is what sticks out in the mind of people. I'm going to bring up none other than the wonderful, the phenomenal Erica Alexander, the big payback. I've seen it 2 times, and I'm going to see it again tomorrow. Please, my sister, share
I appreciate it.
with us about what you want to share, your contribution to the reparations movement, and it is hitting the country by storm. Dr. Erica Alexander.
I think if they could just clone her, that would be reparations alone. I'd take an Akichi any day. Thank you so much. I'm very proud and honored to be here with my mentors, Sheila Jackson Lee and the great Robin Ruth Simmons. They taught me thus far mostly everything I know, along with the great Julianne Marfaux, and many of the people here, see that even Richard Brookshire is out there, and Trevor Smith from Liberation Ventures, and Aria. I've learned from all of them. It's important because I'm an actress and I'm often used in other people's productions as a tool. I'm not a tool maker. I come in to make the thing. I come in to enact a role, and I'm never usually myself. But as myself, I've gotten to realize that I wanted to be inside of social justice. It's probably because my parents raised me that way. I was actually discovered in a basement theater called New Freedom in Philadelphia by a movie company that came to town, and they were looking for black girls. And I was 14, and my mother sent me to a summer program. It was a 6-week program. And in the 5th week, a movie came to town, and they were looking for us, and I auditioned. We all did, because we thought we might be discovered. And after several auditions and screen tests, I was the one they discovered, which is a miracle. Because up until that point, I had only wanted to be a scientist. And I was off to the races. I got my SAG card. Suddenly I was in a union and had health care for the first time in my life. And an opportunity to do something and be something in other people's productions. But if you really know my story, it didn't start there, because obviously I went on to do Living Single and The Cosby Show and Run the World and Wu-Tang American Saga and all these other things that have really been important in my life, and I'm really glad to have had those jobs. But I'm actually born in the mountains of Arizona. I'm one of 6. I spent the first 11 years of my life in a hotel called Starlight off of Route 66. Both my parents were orphans, and my father was an itinerant preacher, Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal. And my mother was a teacher. And we had a hard way to go, because back in the day, he was a tipped wage worker. You'd wait, and he'd pass the offering plate, and that's how we got any money. And he was also itinerant, so he didn't have a home church. He'd take whatever they gave him in a small envelope, which was really tough for a person who had 6 children. So we would do whatever odd jobs people would give us. We would knock on doors. I started around 5 years old, knocking on people's doors. In the mountains of Arizona, there's not many people up there. It's really just a trucking town we would go through, and, you know, ski slopes and those types of things, Navajo, Hopi, Mexican, and German Lutherans. And ask for a job, and they might give it to me sweeping the porch, taking out the trash, get 25 cents, 50 cents. And when it snowed, my brothers would go out and shovel snow and get $20. Perhaps that a $20 bill was mythological. That's my story. And I tell you my story because storytelling is the key to everything. Yes. And up until this point, black people have been able to do well inside of sports and in places where we couldn't be stopped, where a meritocracy. You won the race. You could pass the ball, sure, it was tough to get in there, but we could show what we could do. The last place is the dreamscape, the storytelling scape. Because if they see us as individuals and as humans, then you have to treat us as humans. One of the things I think about is the police officer, so-called police officer, because he proved that he wasn't one that day, who put his knee on George Floyd's neck. Mm-hmm. But he had been told through storytelling that he had the right to do it, and that he could do it with impunity. Years and years of storytelling told him that that was totally fine for a white man to do. And we had to change that narrative. Now people believe that a Black Panther can be king. That's real. Mm-hmm. There are children looking at that, seeing their black president, Barack Obama. For many people, it was Richard Pryor joking about it and those types of things. But it's real now. And I think that that's where I come to this from. Everything they've told me, I try to digest and say, how can we tell it in a way that people see themselves immediately being empathetic and understanding and getting information that you smuggled into it, and they don't even know it's a ticking time bomb inside of their head that if they just make the connections, they can change the world. But storytelling is that vehicle. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who gives us the fuel and the fire to keep going on. I think that there's a real narrative inside of Reparations, inside of entertainment industry, especially with the pay, let's be real, and how they fund these things. And we need a data study I've been asking for a very long time that the data is out there, and if you can show that disparity, you could change a lot of things. It's very hard to fund any documentary. A reparations documentary was nearly impossible. So if you want to know why so many things aren't done, it's because people can't find funding, and then they say, do it yourself, but then they can't get distribution. Now that there's an internet, there is a way to show what you've done. But before that, there was no way. There were the big three, and then there were four with Fox. And then after Fox built their company, they ended funding sitcoms like mine, like Living Single and other things. And you're going to find that in a data study. So there's all sorts of ways that we can talk about restitution and reparations, but I think that if we understand the storytelling space, the space where we all live, if we can do one there and start to fund companies that need our help, creators that can do this job of work, then we can really start to change the hearts and minds of not only Americans, but the world, like we've done for so long, because the 13%, the African Americans, are the biggest culture makers in world history, and that's a fact. So thank you so much for letting me to tell this story. Robin Ruth Simmons, thank you for letting us into your home. And Sheila Jackson Lee, thank you for letting us into your home and your heart. We appreciate it.
Thank you so very much, Erica Alexander. Let's give it up for her. And thank you for telling those stories of these two front runners, these two trailblazers of the reparations movement, Robin Ruth Simmons and the Honorable Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And I know that the film will be showing tomorrow at the DuSable Museum. So those Evanston folks, Chicago folk, be there in the place, have your face in the place. Thank you. So we're going to go on this side now. We're just going to bring a brother in right now, Keith Williams from the Reparations Working Group in Detroit, Michigan. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Keith Williams, and the work, the critical work that you are doing there in Detroit for reparations.
First, I want to give honor to God who makes days like this possible. There's a footnote. You know, Rosa Parks lived in Detroit after she left Birmingham. She worked for John Conyers. And I want to thank Robin Ruth Simmons and Cam for getting me involved in this. One night I was talking to my lovely wife, Kathy Garrett, and Robin Ruth Simmons was on TV, and she was talking about reparations. I told my wife when the show ended, I said, I'm going to call her and get something started in Detroit. So I called Robin. You know, sometimes you see celebrities and they don't call you back. But about a half an hour later, Robin called me back. And we got to talking, and I'm chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party Black Caucus. I believe with God all things are possible. And so I told Robin, I said, Robin, I'm gonna get this done. In Detroit, it's 85% black. We have a white mayor. I had all kinds of obstacles. I was born and raised in Detroit. Went to high school. The only time I left is when I went to college. My father worked in the plants. My mother did day work. But my father told me nobody's better than you. And I truly believe this. And so I told Robin, I'm gonna get this done. In November, on election day of November 2021, we won by 80% of the vote. And the reason I went to ballot initiative, me and Robin talked about it, because I didn't want to get caught up in the political gamemanship. So I took it to the people, and I wanted the people to buy into what I was doing. I love black people. I'm tired of us suffering. I'm tired of seeing everybody else get paid and we don't. I want a return on our investment. And that's why I believe that America owes us, before all the hard work in building up this country, we deserve reparations. Our kids deserve it. I want to leave something to the next generation. My great-granddaddy was born in slavery. My grandfather ran from Cordell, Georgia to get away from tyranny, and they was trying to lynch my grandfather. I see a beautiful future for black folks, but we got to believe it. That's right. We have to believe. We got to wear that in our hearts that we can do this. And so I wear my Stetson hats. I wear my suits, because I want to show the next African young man we can do this. So whatever Robin's doing, she's a brilliant woman. She has created an oasis that would never happen. Somebody had to do it. Jesus was a radical, and I think Robin is a radical too. Okay. but the fact, you have to be a radical to do this kind of work. So at the end of the day, Detroit owes it. We're going to get it done. Right now, we're into the last phase of it. We got 9 city councils. They all got a picture. They're interviewing their persons. And Mary Sheffield, who's our president of our city council, she's going to pick her 4, and I already got my seat. How can they leave me off of it? Because I led the charge. But at the end of the day, we're going to win in Detroit, and we're going to be the shining star on the hill, and we're going to get something done. And I just want to leave you with this. This week, we have a school called Cass Tech. Cass Tech is one of the best schools in the city of Detroit. But one thing, Cass was a slave owner. Okay, our kids walk into that school every day. And I asked the Cass technicians, why don't y'all change that name? They said it'd be wrong for us to change that name. And I said, why? So this is what happened. They got these billionaires want to develop in Detroit. And one of the developers owns the Miami Dolphins. The other one owns the Detroit Pistons and the Red Wings. It's a $1.5 billion development. And so I heard the conversation, they had all their plans and all of this. And so I am tired of them talking about creating jobs for us. And so in the presentation, it was talking about jobs. And then I asked a question after everybody spoke. I said, how do we get a return on our investment? And how do we close the wealth gap on this project? This place got silent. They couldn't answer my question. So if you don't ask them, you will never get.
All right, okay.
And I call them the robber barons. All they are robber barons, come to our communities and rob. So in the final analysis, I say this, and I say this to Robin, it's not how many steps you take, it's the quality of the footprints you leave behind. Robin, you have left some quality footprints, and you're gonna continue to leave quality footprints throughout this generation. God bless you.
Keith Williams, Reparations Working Group, Detroit, Michigan. We're going to turn on this side again, and you know, I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Washington D.C., but you know, I never knew San Francisco to be a conservative place. Why does San Francisco need a Human Rights Commission? Let's hear from Cheryl Davis there, who is the Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission, San Francisco. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what is the work that you do with respect to human rights in San Francisco? Talk to us, sister.
All right. So I would say first and foremost that San Francisco needed a Human Rights Commission because, much like myself, there were a lot of folks migrating from the South to California and specifically to San Francisco. And one of the first things that happened in terms of the evolution of the Human Rights Commission was actually during the 60s when black folks were not allowed to go into the Cadillac dealership. They were not allowed access to certain hotels. They weren't allowed to do a lot of things, to own property. Even baseball players and other folks were not allowed to buy homes in certain neighborhoods in the city. And so the Human Rights Commission was started as a part of that. There's a clip where James Baldwin was visiting San Francisco and some folks were telling him about urban renewal, and he said it looks more like Negro removal to me. And so part of this work has continued because what we've seen happen is so in the 40s and 50s and during that time, black folks were migrating to San Francisco from the South. They were coming because folks were away at war and they were taken care of and making the city still function. And when folks came back from war, they wanted the black folks to go back to where they came from. And so they started the process of basically erasing and removing folks. And so we have been really struggling with what does it look like to be intentional about addressing the disparities that face black folks. Less than 6% of the population in San Francisco is black, but we still see 50% of those that are incarcerated. Less than 7% of the school district is black, but more than 30% of the suspensions, expulsions are black students. And we even see that special ed students are performing better academically than black students in the school district. And we had so many black students being labeled as special ed that they had a decree from the state that they had to do something about that, right? So part of this for us has been, there's an African American Reparations Advisory Committee that was started, but when across the nation everyone was outraged around George Floyd, Mayor Breed and the president of the board supervisor allocated $60 million a year for black folks with a community process. And somebody told me earlier from San Francisco, don't make it seem like it's so nice and easy, because it's not that nice and easy. But it was a process that was intended on putting money into the hands and into the community of black folks. And so I'll leave you with two things. The initiative is called the Dream Keeper Initiative. It's named after the book of poems, the collection of poems by Langston Hughes. And one woman sent a letter to Mayor Breed. So it's the Dream Keeper Initiative. We had many grants. We were giving money to folks for things that people just thought, you know, why would you do that? And she sent a letter to the mayor and it said, I just want to thank you for the Dream Keeper Initiative, because she said, I felt seen, I felt valued. She said, I was able to use that money to hire a graphic artist, and I was able to use it to help somebody with my layout, and I wrote a book. And I told a story, and I never could have done that if I didn't have that. And then the second piece is, over the last 5 years through the down payment assistance program that the city has, 5 years, 5 black folks have gone through that program. But being intentional, allocating the money, being very specific about who this is for and what we needed to do, because 10,000 black folks have been displaced from their homes. In the last 6 months, 18 black folks have gone through, because of this initiative, and bought homes. Not just gone through the program, but bought homes with $500,000 in down payment assistance.
That's right.
So when we do this work, when we think about it, the intentionality, the calling it out, the one thing we heard over and over again from black folks is, I feel invisible in this city. And so putting money to artists to be able to do murals, or putting money to artists to be able to do songs, it takes me back to, I just think about the language and the words in Langston's poem that says, hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. So we are in the process of making sure that folks do not lose their dreams and their hope, and that we can help advance the next generation.
Ooh, that's what I'm talking about. Dream Keepers Initiative. Thank you so very much, Cheryl Davis, Executive Director, Human Rights Commission, San Francisco, California. We're going to move over on this side again, and we're going to now bring up Bobby Burns, Alderman Bobby Burns, Reparations Subcommittee, Evanston, Illinois. Let's give it up for Bobby Burns. Talk to us. Tell us a little bit more about you and just what you're doing as part of the Evanston Reparations Subcommittee.
Thank you for the introduction. I wouldn't be a council member if, while y'all are here, and I welcome everybody to Evanston, I want y'all to check out Ovo Frito for brunch tomorrow. I want y'all to check out Jennifer Edibles, a wonderful restaurant here in the 5th Ward. And there's so many others, Double Cuts, Soul and Smoke. Get your hair cut at Sam's Barbershop. Get your hair cut at Cutting Edge. And anybody else that I miss, I'll make sure to patronize your business myself, so excuse me. But and make sure that hopefully y'all all staying in the Hyatt and the Hilton downtown. We need the revenue, so we appreciate you being here. So please stay as long as you can and as long as you want. We welcome you, truly. I am Bobby Burns, the current 5th Ward council member, and I would say my role is to just keep it going, you know, to continue to lead the lead the war forward. My predecessors are not only Robin Simmons, but former Alderman Dolores Holmes. And, that's my job, to keep it forward. You know, we have a lot of political continuity in the 5th Ward, which I appreciate. We support one another. That's not always the case in politics, especially for new, younger elected leaders. There's a lot of animosity, you know, at the end of elections, and I appreciate that that we've been able to stick it together. And since her retirement, we've worked strongly together. So that's my role, is to keep it going. Reparations is not done just after you pass it, right? You got to figure out how to fund it, especially at the local level. As Mayor Bish said earlier, we're limited in how many funds that we have at the local level, and while we wait on the federal government to do what they need to do, how do we fund it? Through Robin's leadership and the previous council's leadership, we were able to secure, $10 million through the cannabis tax revenue, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. You may not be aware of that a few weeks ago, again, through Robin's leadership and the leadership of the Reparations Committee, which many of the members are here today, we were able to secure an additional $10 million through using a portion of the real estate transfer tax right here, local fund, a home rule tax. And if we can get a round of applause for that, because that's now $20 million towards our local reparations work. And as I've tried my best to keep up with the reparatory justice work in other jurisdictions, and I know ARPA funds have also came up in other jurisdictions, and we're also looking into that. So that is my role first and foremost, is just to keep it going. I also say my role is to acknowledge, and Robin always does, that the repair the reparations, the reparatory justice, a part of that reparatory justice is repairing our entire community. There's a reason why reparations is most commonly referenced after post-war settlements, right? It's about war, real war and damage that was done. And that's the case on the local level. There was a certain war in black communities, and it didn't skip over Evanston. The weapons were restrictive covenants. The weapons were local discriminatory ordinances. The weapons were what I call during a period of inequitable integration, at least here in Evanston, where black institutions were closed down, hospitals and schools. I want to call the attention to schools. 50 or 60 years ago, the Fifth Ward, which I again represent, lost a school. It's called foster schools, about probably at the time 90%, probably more, 99% African American. And during, again, this phase of inequitable integration, we lost a school, hospitals, and others. Not too recently, this school board right here in Evanston, under the leadership of Dr. Horton, we are bringing a new school, a public school, back to this historic African-American community. If we can get a round of applause for that, that is repaired. This is going to be the first school built not only in Evanston, but as y'all know, public schools. Not talking about charter schools or elected enrollment schools where you have to test in or lottery in. We're talking about an investment in your community that you have access to simply because you live around it. That is repair. And so that's the work, is continuing to repair the community at all ends. And I just want to say it's an honor to be on the same stage with all the panelists here, and to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, thank you for your words. I feel full after listening to you. I saw Ta-Nehisi Coates, I want to believe, on the same stage, and I told him afterwards that after his presentation that I want to put on a bulletproof vest and protect you, and I feel the same way about you, so thank you.
Yes.
And that is all. So thank you to everybody for attending. The fight goes on, and that is all. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so very much, Bobby Burns, and thank you for all your contributions. I'm going to turn next to Dr. Julie Ann Malveaux. Oh, she's not only the inaugural dean of the College of Ethnic Studies at Cal State ILA, not only a fellow commissioner on the National African American Reparations Commission, she is an economist extraordinaire and a phenomenal commentator and a mentor to me. Dr. Julie Ann, tell us about some of your work. And I mean, I've learned so much from you, so just go on and just tell us in the brief time that we have a little bit about your Is it on?
As I said, if we could bottle the sisters' enthusiasm, we would be ready for the revolution. Thank you, my sister, for the introduction, and thank you always, my dear sister, friend, leader, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
My sister.
I could not say enough about you, so I won't. Because we could be here all day blowing you up, because you definitely deserve it. You took the baton from our beloved John Conyers, You have added the kind of energy that we've always needed. To have the number of co-sponsors we have on H.R. 40 is nothing short of miraculous. We go back 10 years, even 5 years, and have a reparations conversation with idiots. Let me tell you what I used to do. I get on a plane, and fools, I used to be president of a historically black college. So I might say that fools would say, why do we still need black colleges? Or don't say reparations in public, because people then say, well, what is that? So I don't own all that stuff you put in your ears, but I just got some earplugs. And whenever somebody asks me something stupid, I go, like I'm listening to music. I didn't have any. It's just like, I want to talk to you. We don't know our history, and we must. And the work that I do is around economic envy, around reparations, around why we end up with where we are. There are those who will look at the economic data that our beloved Congresswoman shared and talk about us being lazy, us not working hard enough. But if you look at our history, what you see is sustained theft. Simple, sustained theft over dozens, not hundreds of years. Erica lifted up something really important about the power of storytelling, so I could regale you with statistics, which I will in case you don't shut me off, but I want to start with some stories, because I want you to understand why we need reparations, yes. Why we have a wealth gap. We don't have a wealth gap because we didn't save our money. We didn't have any to save, because they kept taking it. We look at the unemployment rate, well, you know what? There was zero unemployment in enslavement. Now today, it uttered the numbers, and they said that overall unemployment was now down to 3.2, but for black folks, it's 5.7. This is a pattern that we've seen over the years. But let me tell you a couple stories. The first story, of course, all of you know about Ida B. Wells, our beloved foremother who documented lynchings. But the first lynching she documented took place among 3 friends of hers. What had happened was, 3 black men, one named Tommy Moss, opened a grocery store in an area called The Curve in Memphis. And opened the store because white folks' stores were nasty. White men talked up under black women's clothing. The man who owned that store had 10 citations, 10 in a 2-year period for selling alcohol, which was illegal in 1892. But he had all these citations. So this brother Tommy Moss said, we're going to start our own store. So they started the People's Grocery. Well, the white man could not stand the competition. So as the black women started going to the People's Grocery, the white folks started getting angry. And they started doing whatever they could to suppress this success. One day, 2 little boys got into a fight over marbles. That resulted in 3 white people going to the People's Grocery with guns over marbles that little boys were fighting over. Well, the brothers were ready. They had just come back from the Spanish-American War. They had guns too. Yeah. So the white folks came with their guns, the brothers had their guns, loose shooting went on. And nobody was killed, but a white man was clipped. The next day, the brothers were arrested, and the next day they were lynched because of economic envy and economic competition, because they just couldn't stand it. Then let me tell you about Maggie Lena Walker, first black woman to charter a bank in Richmond, Virginia. First black woman to charter a bank. We used to think it was the first woman, or we thought she was the first woman, but there's some little scuzzy huzzy in Texas. She's a white girl whose husband had the bank, and she got to be called the first one. I'm like, But anyway, what can we do? So now, Maggie Lena Walker started a bank. She wrote a brilliant speech. She talked about, let us take our own interest. Then she opened up a department store called St. Luke's Department Store. It was in Richmond. Because, the Elks and the Masons and all the organizations, they were ordering their uniforms from New York and from white people. She said, why can't we order our own uniforms? So her store was a success for 7 years. But then the white merchants in Richmond went to New York and told the folks in New York, if you trade with Maggie Lena, we won't trade with you. And so her department store, after 7 successful years, failed because she couldn't get merchandise. Now I'm gonna tell you about one more story.
You got 1 minute for one story?
Well, I have to tell this one fast, but I gotta tell this one. It's about a brother named Anthony Hawkins. The brother owned 427 acres of what they call good cotton land. Good cotton land. White folks were envious, more than envious. They couldn't stand it. The white woman was quoted in the newspaper after he was lynched saying that he was a prosperous Negro and also arrogant. And his arrogance apparently is what got him killed. What had happened was, a white man was standing in line at the county store to sell his cottonseed. Brother Crawford was standing behind him. The proprietor offered the white man 5 cents more per pound than he offered Brother Crawford. Crawford said, "I'd rather put my cottonseed in the damn river," he said damn river, than to sell it to you at a discount. There was a law in, where was this? This was in South Carolina, Abbeville, South Carolina. There was a law that said you could not curse a white person. It was on the books. So he said, damn. So he was arrested because he cursed a white person. Now, Brother Man was so bad, they told him the fine was $15. This was back in 1918. Figuring he didn't have $15, he reached his pocket and said, here's $15. Well, they were so agitated by that they basically lynched him. Not only did they lynch him, they let his body hang downtown Abbeville, South Carolina, until it rotted. Not only that, but then they ran his relatives, the 2 white men who were craving his land, his 427 acres of good cotton land, a river that he needed you. The white men were declared the executors of his estate. They wanted his land. They were declared the executors of his estate. Then his people were given 30 days to get off his land. That was black wealth. 427 acres of good cotton land worth millions of dollars today, but they ran those people off that land. I could tell stories upon stories upon stories, but she ain't gonna let me.
Dr. Julian, every time I hear you, I swear, I think of Gil Scott-Heron's song, "Who Gonna Pay Reparations on My Soul?" Every time I hear you, because these stories, just like Eric Alexander was, those stories are just so very important. So I know you were trying to just finish it for whatever. And,
no, but the stories are heart-rending, and I won't tell anymore because I know I'm out of time. Here's what I will say. In 1880, black people had $1 for every $36 that white people had. By 1910, it was $1 for every $16 white people had. In other words, in a 30-year period, we cut the wealth gap in half. Today, it's $1 for every between 7 and 10, depending on who's counting. But let's call it 10. $1 for every $10 that white people had, which means we made more relative progress between 1880 and 1910 than we have made now. Why is that? As soon as white folks saw us accumulating, they started passing Jim Crow laws and other laws to prevent us from accumulating. I'm gonna stop, but y'all get the point, and thank you, Erica. I was gonna give a statistical presentation, but you reminded me that storytelling is powerful.
Reparation on my soul. As we're coming almost down to a close, let's get some male energy over here. On this side, Brother Cam Howard, we're talking about someone who, oh my goodness, first of all, fellow commissioner on National African American Reparations Commission. The person who really brought N'Cobra out of the embers, to prominence, and now he's the director of his own organization, Reparations United, out of Chicago. Cam Howard, the author of Laying the Foundation for Local Reparations. Take it away, Cam Howard.
Thank you, Sister Nkechi. I want to thank the host city, Evanston, Illinois, represented by Bobby Burns, and of course the mayor. And thank Robin for allowing me to have a front seat in her immaculate life. It's very important. Thank Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee for your tremendous leadership. You inspire me to get up and work hard every day on the issue of reparations. Thank you. There's 3 words that I want to talk about. Those 3 words are mission, mandate, and method. Somebody say mission. Mission. Somebody say mandate.
Mandate.
And somebody say method.
Method. We
heard about the mission today, and that mission is clear. We only have one mission, and that mission is to get a reparations commission passed in the federal government through executive order by the President of the United States. That is the mission. Everything that we do on a federal level has to be toward that mission. No matter what religious background we have, no matter what social background, or whether we're nationalists or integrationists or whatever political ideology we hold, that is the number one mission for the movement right now. And we have to be clear on that. The second word was mandate. There's a lot of confusion about what actually H.R. 40 is designed to do. Some people say it's a weak bill. Some people say it's just a study bill because they don't understand the mandate. The mandate of this bill is to create a commission that is to study the crimes committed against people of Africans and people of African descent during the period of enslavement, and to study and determine the impact of those crimes on current living Black Americans. The mandate of that bill is to create a commission to study the crimes of Jim Crow segregation, many that we've heard about today, and to determine what continued impact those crimes had on current living Black folks today. Some of us are living, I was born in 61, and Jim Crow officially ended in 65, and there's others who were born before me, but even those who were born after 1965, what is the impact of those crimes on current living Black folk today? That's the mandate. The third mandate of the commission is to study the crimes committed in this neo-apartheid period that we live in and determine the full impact of those crimes on us today. That is the mandate. What were the crimes? How were we impacted by those? And then develop proposals to address each of those areas of crime. That means that the bill is designed shortly to create a master plan of redress for Black America. Let me say that again. Clearly, it is to create a master plan of redress for Black America. All of the injuries that we can determine from enslavement, from Jim Crow apartheid, from neo-apartheid. I talked a little bit earlier about the $200 billion that was robbed from our community from 2005 to 2007 to 2012, a 5-year period. $200 billion, over 60% of Black wealth was snatched out of our community. That wasn't in 1865, that wasn't in 1929, that was in 2007 to 2012, less than 20 years ago. And we're suffering, our communities are suffering from that extraction of wealth. Yeah. What is the master plan to address all of this crimes and all of this continued injury? That is what this commission is designed to do. So now we know the mission is to get an executive order passed, a commission passed, and put into law through executive order. We know the mandate of this particular bill, which is to create a master plan of redress for Black America. What is the method that we must use to get to that, to achieve this mission? Well, that method is unity. There's 3 areas of contention in the reparations movement right now that we have to get past. One is around eligibility. Well, the commission is designed to determine who's going to be eligible based on, Dr. Cheryl, the injuries that have been suffered, that we suffer from. The remedy, the proposals to address the remedy is going to automatically determine who is eligible. You can't put eligibility before you develop the proposal. Right? So we shouldn't even be having that conversation about eligibility right now. We can have it after the commission is formed, but we have to stay on what? On the mission. We have to be clear on the mission. We can deal with eligibility after the commission is formed because that's where we determine the redress, not before. The second area of contention in the movement today is around forms. What forms should reparations take? Some people say it should only address the racial wealth gap. And we talked about, and all of us that have been here speaking in these last few days have been talking about the myriad forms of injury that we experience in our communities. And again, the mandate of the commission is to look at all of the injuries and create a number of forms of redress. And again, that argument or that contention we should take up after the commission is formed. Right now, we focus on the mission, and that's to get the executive order passed. We can deal with forms. The form that I would like is repatriation. I want some money to go back to the continent. And I'm going to fight for that. I'm going to organize for that. But after the commission, I'm not going to start talking about it right now because it makes no sense. What I'm going to do now, what I encourage all of us to do, is stay on mission. Do not waver from the mission. And that's to get this bill. That's what our fearless leader is telling us what to do, and then it's leading us down that line is to accomplish this mission. The third area of contention, and I'm going to conclude here, the third area of contention in the movement right now is around identity. The bill is entitled, The Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. It don't matter if you call yourself a freedman. It doesn't matter if you call yourself a Pan-African. It don't matter if you call yourself a descendant of slaves. It don't matter if you call yourself a Deus, descendant of African slave in America. You are in that 50 million African Americans that this act is designed to create repair for. There's no reason for us to be having this discussion around identity at this particular time, because it distracts us from the mission. Our goal is to stay on mission, and we can win with the leadership of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Thank you.
Cam Howard, Reparations United. So, 3 years ago, most of the country had never even heard of what was going on in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know that? I mean, really. And now today, the whole world knows. We're going to hear now from Vanessa Hall Harper, council member, Tulsa, Oklahoma, my sister. Oh, on fire. Talk to us, council member.
Thank you again for this opportunity to serve in this capacity once again. I want to give much praise to my soror, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I want you to know I carry my Constitution with me everywhere I go to, and I teach it as well, and I tell my students to do the same. I tell them when you get pulled over by the police, pull that out and see what happens. But then I also want to acknowledge my sister Robin Ruth Simmons. I thank God for you, my sister. So thank you for all the work that you are doing. I will be really brief. We have a lot of things going on in Tulsa, and it is always a fight. It is always a fight. But I will say that one of the things I'm so excited about right now, we just learned that we were funded, and I'm going to acknowledge Christy Williams, who is our chair of the Greater Tulsa Area African American Affairs Commission, who is also a historian, and she happens to be my campaign manager too, and my manager, period. But she created a program, it's called Black History Saturdays, and it is funded by the National Geographic. And this is a first for our community, and so we are so excited about what that's going to do. This is an affront to House Bill 1775. In the state of Oklahoma, and I'll share some other states as well, but our governor signed a bill, 1775, which is an affront basically to teaching the truth. We don't teach civics in our public schools anymore, and we have been told as educators, and I teach at the college level, so it doesn't necessarily impact me, but at the school level, public school, you cannot teach history, the truth of history. They want you to teach this whitewashed version of history that makes everybody feel comfortable and can sing Kumbaya. And so what we've taken upon ourselves to do is she's created this curriculum where we're going to teach our own community, since our public schools are refusing to do that. And so I wanted to acknowledge that, and we're very excited about that and appreciative of National Geographic and their support. They're looking to do more things in our community as well. I was here last time when we were talking about the city council. We basically passed 2 resolutions. The first one was during the commemoration of the 1921 race massacre, and that was an acknowledgement and an apology. The second resolution we passed 6 months later, roughly 6 months later, was to support a community-led conversation as it relates to the massacre and basically what reparations looks like at the local level in our community. So we're going to be following the same strategy that you just talked about, Cam, as far as having these conversations, identifying with our community what that looks like for us in Tulsa, on the boots on the ground. How can it be implemented, right? Local government, what rights or what can we do from a local government standpoint to address and to repair and not only acknowledge but to repair for reparations. And so those are the 2 things that 3 things that we're working on. There are more. We have mass graves investigations that's taking place where we are literally escorting remains, but that's a fight, right? When you see the national picture of it, of what's being put out there through our city government is everything is hunky-dory and we're doing the right thing. See, we're not a racist city. But the reality is we're fighting tooth and nail. The reality is that we are being shut down. Our oversight committee that I fought for and demanded that we have if we're going to do this process is being ignored. And so that's a battle in and of itself. And as I said earlier, it's always a fight. So just pray for us. There are a lot of things that I'm sure that's going on in many communities that's working on these issues. But we are here for the fight. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Vanessa Hall Harper, give it up. Let's give it a big hand to all of our panelists. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Ron Daniels, convener of the African American Reparations Commission, or president of the Institute of Black World 21st Century Long Distance Runner. Take it away, Dr. Daniels.
All right, let's give it up for Nkechi Taifa for leading us through this conversation. Like I said, we're going to bottle up a lot of that energy. Well, folks, it's been a long day, and actually, our guests, we've been at this since 8:30 this morning, all the way through having these conversations. We really would have liked to have time for Q&A, but we really don't have time for Q&A because we just run out of time. So I hope you'll forgive us for that. We'll try to do better next time. We had a little bit of issues in terms of timing and flights and so forth to make that happen. But I mean, was this powerful or what? I mean, we're talking about road to reparations is a hashtag #1. We're talking about the issue of mission, mandate, and method. And Lord have mercy, we too are Americans. I mean, goodness gracious, that was incredibly powerful. So what we want to do is we're going to call Robin Ruth Simmons up for briefly to just have a word. And then I want to have Reverend Dr. Robert Turner approach the stage so that he can, in fact, give the benediction. So would you please approach the stage? So Robin?
I'm going to keep it really brief. I don't have much more to add that my mentors and colleagues didn't already share. My councilman, Bobby Burns, gave a great update on what's happening in Evanston. A lot of good progress is happening here we're building on. I really just want to acknowledge so many partners in Evanston that make this possible. Specifically our interfaith community, our allies, institutions like the Evanston Community Foundation, District 65, and so many others. Our council that makes this happen. We don't do this work alone. We have a committee. If the committee members from the Evanston Reparations Committee that are still here, if you could please stand and be acknowledged for the important work that you're doing. Attorney Claire McFarland, Councilwoman Chrissy Harris. I know that our elder, Mr. Carlos Sutton, was here earlier. I know that they were all here at some point. There's Mr. Sutton right there. He's the star of the big payback. Make sure you see it tomorrow. But this is who is doing the work. And so if you are an Evanstonian or if you're curious about what's happening in Evanston, you can reach out really to any one of these committee members that are making this possible and sending these recommendations informed by our community to the city council. And it's our city council that is passing this with the victory that we had just last week, increasing our fund by $10 million from real estate transfer tax, which is a huge victory. And so over the last couple days, we have been in a room at a round table learning and sharing intense legal strategies, legal frameworks, and philanthropy and reparations, and the Academy and reparations, hearing report backs from every region in this nation on the progress that they have for reparations, how they've been inspired by Evanston or done their own work, very different than Evanston, but it is repair nonetheless. We are here gathered to support the work of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and stand beside her as she makes a demand and call to action for passing or an executive order for H.R. 40. One thing that I have to do is I have to report back to my councilman. You shouted out our businesses, and I want to shout out that at NARC and FirstRepair, we model absolutely everything that we talk about. So I want you to know those businesses that you mentioned have already been supported. We've had breakfast, lunch, and and dinner from Jennifer's Edibles, C&W Market. Who else? Help me out. Yo Fresh, Noir de Ben, Seth Watson has done all of our audio. Jeanville, the man from Radio La Différence, is doing our live stream. Dwayne Logan, Hotbox Entertainment, is our photographer, as well as Jonathan Davis, I've called him Chris. Jonathan Davis is photographer. The list goes on and on and on of Black businesses that we have intentionally supported in this space as we brought in 100 leaders from across this nation to support our, and we're staying at the Hilton Orrington downtown Evanston, so you'll be happy about that. But know that we model everything. Dr. Daniels has made it a priority to make sure that we are finding. So when I have people come to me, and this happens to Bobby too, and they say, well, we wanted to hire Black and contract Black, but we couldn't find anybody to do the work. Well, I contracted 10 Black people yesterday, so I don't know, you're not looking hard enough. And so this is a way that you can begin the process of repair, the practice of repair, in the way you are intentionally being a consumer, you are doing business, you are making decisions, and that's something that we're doing here. So just really proud of the work that we're doing. Thank you to all of our guests that came from near and far, for the sacrifice that you have made. We have wore you out, so I hope that you're able to rest on Saturday night or Sunday before you return back to your regular obligations. Thank you all, and please, please make sure you get on that bus and get to Good to Go, because we're gonna have a great time and eat some Caribbean food and hear some live music and have a DJ and have cocktails if you drink cocktails, or you can have juice if you prefer, but we're gonna have a great time, so get on that bus. Yes.
Out of town, the breakfast place. Did you mention the breakfast place out of? That's what you were saying. Out of.
What? Okay. I think everybody else, they know not to get on the bus.
Okay. All right, let's give it up again for Robin Ruth Simmons and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. History is being made right here in Evanston. So now what I want to do is call on Reverend Robert Turner. He is the pastor emeritus, I'll get the term correct, of the historic Vernon AME Church in Tulsa. That is a wound that we all share and bear. We ain't gonna forget that. We can't forget that. It ain't just Tulsa, it's all of us. And we are never going to rest until our ancestors are repaired in Tulsa. And so he is now the senior pastor of the Empowerment Temple. He'll do the benediction, and by point of personal privilege, I want to at least do at least one Harambe together when we close out. So we'll be all together and give ourselves a one community Harambe together. That means let us all pull together.
Tell them to tweet HR 40. Tweet HR 40 must pass.
What's the tweet? What's the handle? What is it? EO40. Okay, so it's hashtag EO40. Hashtag EO40. Hashtag EO40. Hashtag EO40. Come on, brother.
Over and over again.
Let us stand, and as we prepare to be dismissed. Amen. Hey, Kristen. Almighty, Heavenly Creator, Sustainer of life, we thank you for tonight and these soldiers, these trailblazers. We thank you, dear God, for the alderman now who was replaced, Alderman Simmons, who represents this area. We thank you for the work that's being done in Detroit, the reparations movement there. We thank you, God, for my sister in Tulsa, fearless fighter for your truth and your justice. We thank you, God, for Dr. Malveaux and her critical analysis of the economy, her beautiful storytelling. We thank you, God, for the attorney representing those families who suffered their own destruction of their Wall Street. We pray, dear God, that you continue to pour in to that Duracell bunny we call Nikichi. God, we thank you for Dr. Ron Daniels, who is the sage and the champion that continues to inspire us all. We lift up Cam Howard as he teaches us on local reparations. We thank you, God, for that daughter and leader, Erica. Some call her an actress. You call her your servant. We thank you, Lord, for the work being done in Sacramento, San Francisco, and in California on reparations. We thank you, Lord, for our leader, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. We praise you for what she is doing in Congress, and most of all, the convener, the organizer, the head of FirstRepair and founder, Alderman Robin Rue Simmons. Lord, we lift her up now, and everyone who is here, we ask that you encourage our hearts, that you strengthen our souls, that you give refreshing to our spirit. We speak against any evilness that has been planned upon your children. We curse any health problems that may be birthing in their bodies. We rebuke all of them, and we pray for safe travel home and to our various destinations. In the name of the great repairer of the universe, the atoner of our souls, Jesus the Christ, we pray and ask it all. Amen.
All right, so we want everybody to we're going to do one Harambe, just one. And so what we're going to do, and by the way, all the panelists stay on the stage because I'm being instructed. We want to get a photo and all that. But Harambe means let us all pull together. And on the count of 3, we're going to pull it down and hold it as long as I do, if you, right? All right. Yeah. So it's 1, 2, 3, Harambe!
After this picture, we want all of the out-of-town leaders to come up and take a picture as well.
Then from there, Daniel's in the middle, right behind. There you go, making sure. So that everyone just squeezes in, wire light. You there we go. Yes.
Jump up a little bit, and everybody else, you can all start coming up on the time and
If all of the guests that are here from the symposium can make it to the stage, everyone, whether you're from out of town or not, if you're here participating in the symposium, please join us. Thank you.
instructions again? You want to direct us again?